Hello and welcome to the podcast. This is Get in the Driver's Seat. We're telling stories about leadership moments and small to mid-sized professional practices. I'm your host, Sandra Bekhor, Practice Management Coach at Bekhor Management. I'm excited to introduce our guest today, one of Ontario's most recognized divorce lawyers, Steve Benmor, a divorce strategist and family mediator at Benmor Family Law Group and the innovator behind Benmor Family Law Strategies. Welcome, Steve.
Hi, Sandra.
Hi. So, Steve, when we started talking about doing this podcast together, you said something interesting. Well, it's not the first time you said something interesting, just to be sure. But we were talking about how the vast majority of law firms are small in Ontario, and despite all the resources that we have these days, the web, these podcasts, social media, and other tools that are around, they still struggle. Most firms still struggle today. And one of the ways to break out of this hand-to-mouth cycle is to build a team, and let that team be an extension of your brand, so that you're not always the go-to person. You've done that successfully with your team, and your team continues to grow. So I was hoping you could shed some light on what works.
I've been practicing family law now for 30 years, and there was the period when I was a practitioner and married with children. And then there was the period when I was a practitioner while I was going through a divorce. And then there was a period when I was a practitioner having the experience of divorce in my background and in my history. And the reason I mention those three stages is because it very much affected my perception of law, my perception of legal service providers, and the sort of expectations that I had as a consumer of legal services. And it really did a remarkable job in a positive way of explaining to me in real life what it was that my clients really need, really want. And that, in combination with a concept or an axiom that I very much believe in, which is the golden rule, treat your fellow person as you would want to be treated, has together influenced in a very impactful way how I treat my customers, my clients, how I treat fellow counsel. A lot of times people will use the word opposing counsel. I don't see them as my opponent. I see them as part of my team. Our clients have a problem and we're on the same team to try to solve the problem. We're not opponents. We're not enemies. We are trying to help people move on to the next chapter of their lives. And so the underlying philosophy of what it is that we do is so important to me that I have communicated that and continue to communicate that to my clients, to fellow counsel, if and when it comes up with judges and mediators, and definitely with my team. And, when we talk about firms, small firms, the vast majority of firms in Ontario are 5 lawyers or less. In fact, I think it's 95% of law firms in Ontario are made up of a size of 5 lawyers or less. And so, Sandra, when you talk about law firms that are struggling, a firm has different definitions of struggling. Some might say, we've got way too much business and not enough time. We're struggling. Some will say, we've got so much time, not enough business. We're struggling. Some will say, we've got too much of one kind of business and not enough of another. Our financial statements are really, really healthy, but we're struggling. So a lot of it has to do with how we define struggling. I mean, some people, I spoke to somebody yesterday, they're struggling not because of any of the above. They've had a turnover of staff. People come, people go. The clients don't suffer. The financial statements don't suffer. They're doing really, really well. They're doing well in terms of the client service. They're doing well in terms of revenue. They're doing well in terms of goodwill and the generation of new business. But they're not doing goodwill. They're not doing very well with respect to the maintenance and the cohesion of their team. So, when we talk about success and failure as a lawyer, there's so many ways to measure that. And in my case, I measure it by looking at each person that I interact with and asking myself, what would I want if I was them? So I ask myself, what would I want if I was the guy working for Benmor? What would I want if I was the guy being served by Benmor? What would I want if I was the guy that Benmor was arguing a case to, who wanted me to make a decision in one way or the other? So I'm constantly thinking of that axiom, treat your fellow man as you'd want to be treated, as I, in real time, in the moment, think about very deliberately, what am I doing? And what is the impact of what I'm doing? And that is the message that I share to my team in order for whoever is dealing with my team to get the same exact treatment.
That's beautiful. That's exactly what extension of the brand is, so that they understand what the culture is intended to be, and they understand how to play their role as individuals, so that the group collectively communicates this same idea. And I mean, how has that shared understanding helped you in terms of the building of your practice and minimizing the idea of struggle? So you said you were right, Steve. Struggle is different for different firms, and that's why all marketing plans start with objectives. You have to be clear about what is it that you're trying to accomplish, because it's not the same for every firm. But because you've actually done this, and it's funny because I actually wrote down in my notes preparing for this podcast exactly the phrase that you just used. I said, I thought, okay, well, his firm does talk about values and vision, but what is it that I got? And I wrote down, like treating people the way you want to be treated. I literally wrote that, which is what you opened with.
People get a little queasy when it comes to those three taboo topics: sex, politics, and religion. Well, lawyers as a group oftentimes say things that are controversial because lawyers take cases that are sometimes very difficult cases. And those difficult cases sometimes change the law and change society, whether we're talking about Sunday shopping or medical assistance in death or abortion rights or the rights of same-sex couples. Lawyers are at the forefront of societal change. So when we talk about, the situation involving lawyers in private practice, it's very easy to just do what everybody else has always done and not do anything new or different. And I joined the legal profession in the 90s, and I worked under some senior lawyers, and their expectation was whatever they did, I should just follow them. Well, I actually don't think that's true. I think lawyers are smart and creative people, and they tend to carry quite a bit of authority with the people that they interact with. And if they use their leadership position to positively influence others, then it actually is far more valuable than just that one transaction, that one client, that one case. Because what you're really doing is you're creating a ripple effect, like when you throw a rock in the water and those ripples keep going out and out and out. And that precisely is what I'm doing at my office by influencing in the immediate circle, my team, the circle outside of that, my clients, the circle outside of that, allied professionals like mediators, judges, and other lawyers, the circle outside of that, the next generation of people that I have touched, whether it's any one of the other circles that I mentioned already. And the most obvious is the effect that I have on the children of my clients. And so I am highly attentive to the impact of my silence, the impact of my voice, the impact of my advice, and the impact of the role that I play. And so when we talk about, the taboo subjects, I am not shy to admit that I am a religious person, and I really am proud of my Jewish faith, and I pray every day, and I go to synagogue at least once or twice a week, and then I study Torah, which is the Jewish Bible, regularly. And whenever I go to synagogue on Saturday, our Sabbath, and I sit down, the very first thing that I do before I pray, before I do anything, I put on my prayer shawl. The second thing that I do is I sit down in my prayer shawl. I open up the prayer book to page 12. And in my prayer book, at the very top of page 12, is Leviticus 19:18 that says in both English and in Hebrew, respect your fellow man as you would want to be respected, or love your fellow man as you would want to be loved. And that's something, and I actually reread it like 3 or 4 or 5 times as I meditate. In my life, I must have read that thousands of times by now, because I don't ever want to rest on the fact that, oh yeah, I already know that. No, I deliberately want to be reminded of it all the time, so that in every interaction with every person, I'm constantly aware, hyper aware of the fact that they want to be treated a certain way. I need to figure that out, because it's never the same for 2 people. And, I could have at any moment in time 100 clients. They don't want to be treated the same as 99 others. They want to be treated their own way. And that's my job. My job is how to figure out how to do that and meet their needs. Because if I meet their needs, I'm helping them meet the needs of other people that they need to help. Sometimes it's their spouses, sometimes it's their children, their staff themselves. So I know that if I do it right, I'm doing it right by way more people than the people that I'm doing it right to.
Right, because your very presence is influencing the way other people will carry that forward. That's the ripple.
Correct.
And so to bring this full circle back to where we started, how has that minimized the struggle?
Well, for one, it has made my work more fulfilling.
Mm.
And nothing can be worse for a person to be resentful of either their day, their life, their relationship, their home situation. So resentment builds a lot of negative behavior, not good. So for me, I actually go the other way. I want fulfillment. I want to enjoy what I do. I want to feel like I've helped, like achieved. And so by being purposeful in that respect, it brings greater joy and fulfillment, which then is noticed by the people that are around me, and mainly my team. And it's an interesting thing. COVID has created a situation where the sort of things that people normally would have seen when they work together in a same office, they don't see as much, because they're working from home or they're not in the space at the same time. So in the last few months, I have tried really hard to create space together live. I've actually had to insist that clients come in. It's funny, in the middle and late stages of COVID, a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago, people would be like, well, can we just hire you and just deal with you by phone, by email, by video. Yeah. And it worked for us. It was totally fine with us lawyers, and it's fine with the clients. And then as we got out of COVID, um, clients, I would offer them, you want to meet live, or did you want to meet, by phone or by Zoom? Oh, by phone, by Zoom is fine. Fine with us. I've now gotten to the point where I am saying to the clients, I know it might be fine with you to do this meeting by phone or by Zoom, but I would really like for you to come in. And if that's not convenient, then let's find a time when it is. Could be the weekend. Or if it's really that difficult for you, I'll come to you. Now, that's controversial. Those lawyers that I worked for in the 90s, they would not be cool with that. But we also didn't have the internet, and we also didn't have social media, and we also didn't have Zoom in the 90s either. So for what it's worth, we are able to use some of the techniques of the past, involve some of the novel IT and innovations of the present, and find a medium where we still serve the client the way they need to be served, whatever that means. And so, I try really hard to bring humanity back into the work that we do, because it's so easy in the era of internet and Zoom and social media and AI and chat GPT to sort of go, well, we don't need human contact anymore, or we need less of it, or, we could rely on technology more. There's a role for technology and there's a role for humanity. And it's our task to find the right balance. No different than finding the right balance when your foot is on the clutch in a manual transmission car. If you go too much one way, the car will conk out. You got to find the right balance. And legal services, particularly in the consumer side of law, I'm referring now to criminal law, estates law, family law, real estate, landlord tenant, human rights, the stuff that involves people, not some corporation on Wall Street buying a corporation on Bay Street, but more of the people oriented, which is, by the way, what 95% of law firms in Ontario do. That's where you got to know what the role of technology is, and you got to know what the role of humanity is, and you got to find the right balance. And there's no question that people still need, want, desire, and may not even be consciously aware of the fact that they need human care, because it's just so easy to say, yeah, you know what, just pick up the phone and call, or let's Zoom in.
This, what you're describing, sounds like respect. And, it sounds like it's one of the foundations of your firm, and it's a tool that, tool sort of understates it, but it's one of the ways that you have brought your team on board to sort of continue with your brand. But there are other aspects to getting the team on board and extending the brand through other people. And there are challenges to doing that. I've seen it with clients. I've seen it where, the new lawyers will come on and they're not straight out of school. These are people who have many years of experience under their belt, but they are hesitant. They're hesitant to run meetings by themselves. They're hesitant to go to court. They're hesitant to write articles, hesitant to get on social media, or to reach out to their networks and say, hey, look at me, this is what I'm doing, and invite people to events. So part of it is about supporting them and overcoming that, that their limitations.
The reluctance, the hesitation,
Yes.
the apprehension.
Right. And
Yeah.
so have you encountered that, and
Yes.
how have you dealt with it?
Yeah. It's funny. Sometimes the limitations that you're describing are outside. I mean, let's be frank. There's a lot of people in society that have had ceilings over their heads that they could not get through. Women, people of color, people of different faiths, immigrants, people that live in certain parts of Toronto or Ontario. I mean, there's a whole host of bases for why people have had limitations that have prevented their personal growth and potential. Equally, there are limitations that reside inside of us. And for many people, those limitations are not because of the color of their skin, their gender, or their immigration status. Those limitations come possibly from the way they were raised as children, maybe the way their grandparents were raised. It could be intergenerational. Whatever the situation might be, there is definitely an internal and an external explanation for why some people are limited in their growth in business, professionally, and also personally. And so there is a limit to what an employer or a lawyer for a client can do. Now, here's the funny thing. I have a very small firm, and I treat the people in my firm as though they are my children, or at least my siblings. So I treat them like family. They feel it. Small little things. We celebrate everybody's birthday, everybody's accomplishment. Somebody has a good day or a bad day. We're there, much like a parent or a sibling would be for them, whether it's professional or personal. I travel a lot. I bring gifts back, how I would bring gifts back for my own children. So they experience me as a father or as an uncle. And by doing so, it affords me the ability to say things that a father or an uncle would say to help them break through that ceiling that they've created or that has been put on them by society. And then this is where it gets even funnier. I'm in a line of work, and I could have been in so many other lines of work, but I'm in one line of work, and I'm not referring to law. I'm referring specifically to family law, where people come to me and they have to share everything with me, even the really embarrassing details of their past. And as a result of that relationship that I have with them, it affords me the opportunity to say things to them from a place of care and concern, professionally speaking, that will allow them to overcome some of those challenges that have been imposed on them or they have imposed on themselves, because it's coming from a place of trust, respect, and understanding. And the things that I say to clients to help them, they often don't hear from other people because they haven't let those other people in on their lives. But the nature of my work is they have to let me in because they've put their personal lives in my hand. And in some cases, I have clients that bring to a meeting or to a Zoom or phone call another family member, and I have to check if the family member that they're bringing knows what I know. Sometimes they don't. And oftentimes I hear that, the family member has learned something about their own family member from me when I would have thought they would have known that for 30 years before I entered the picture. But they don't. And so when we talk about helping people achieve their greatest potential, the person that creates that trigger, that opens that door, that shows them the light, that person has a really big responsibility, and they can really get it wrong. And so I try, to respect that role that I have and to get it right. And I have erred before, but it hasn't deterred me, and I keep on going. I had a team meeting yesterday with my entire team. We have team meetings every 2 weeks. And some would say they're like Tony Robbins conventions because I pump them up. I also educate them. We also discuss substantive client file work and other elements of the firm, but I treat each meeting as an opportunity to raise people up. And it's not easy because everybody's different, but I convey each meeting something of value that will give them the hunger, the drive, the ambition to want to make the next 2 weeks better than the last 2 weeks. And again, it's fulfilling to me. It's fulfilling to them. And that's what drives it forward. If people said to me, you know what, it's not working for me, please stop. In fact, it actually happened one time. One of the team members said, you keep on pushing this idea of joining a charity and becoming more involved in the community. It's a fantastic idea. You do it, others do it, but by you constantly pushing it, you're putting too much pressure on me, and I can only do so many things at the same time. Fair comment. I pulled back on that person on that topic.
That's great. What you're talking about comes up a lot in coaching meetings. Essentially, it's giving and receiving feedback. So you did both. And you walked the talk by receiving it well, too. One of the ways that I like to talk about this that really just takes the pressure right off of people, lawyers and other professionals, especially when somebody's new at having people management responsibilities. So, the newly promoted partner, the newly promoted associate, and all of a sudden they're responsible for somebody else. And they run into, oh, I have to be critical. And they don't want to be critical. So what I have found helps is to help them to understand if they get involved in the person's career plan and really understand, where's this person trying to go? What would they like to see happen to their career in the next year, 2 years, 3 years? And then to start to see their role in assisting that, making that happen. Okay, now let's start talking about giving and receiving feedback. So you go into the meeting with this individual that has told you they would like to go from here to here. Well, okay, you're seeing these errors on this report. That is part of the step. That is part of the process. And if you don't help them with overcoming those issues, they will not get where they want to go. And so therefore, the nicest thing that you can do is to give them the feedback. And you give it to them in that spirit of, I am here to help you get where you want to go.
Absolutely. It's not uncommon for people to be unaware of the obstacles in their journey. And they're aware that they can't get to their destination. They're vividly aware of that. They know where they are. And they feel like it's hopeless. They can't make partner. They can't get a certain number of clients. They can't get a type of case or type of cases that they want. They're not attracting the right staff. I mean, whatever the situation might be professionally. And then, of course, there's the personal side. They're not hanging out with the right people, or they're not meeting the right partners and so forth. I mean, oftentimes there's no examination of why. Like what is going on? It could be internal, it could be external situation that you've placed yourself in. It could be both, but that's where growth is found. Is first you have to identify. I mean, going back to Vahavta, which is love your fellow man as yourself. If you think about those words, love your fellow man as yourself. Don't you first have to figure out if you love yourself? Like first you have to figure, and actually, now that you think about it, if you have to figure out how to love yourself before you can love the other person like yourself, don't you first have to figure out who you are? Because first you got to know who you are. Then you've got to love who you are. Not so easy. Then after you know who you are and you love who you are, now find out who the other person is. Not easy either. Then you've got to figure out how to behave in such a way to the other person as though just as much as you love yourself. This is a very complicated, although very short axiom from the Torah, from the Bible, but whoa, way complicated because there's so many levels to it. And so when we talk about the limitations and helping people achieve their goals, whatever that goal might be, making partner, building your firm, making more money, having more time to yourself, even though you've got a busy law firm, all of that goes right back to the beginning of what I said, which is, you got to know who yourself is. You got to then love yourself. And then you've got to treat the people that are around you as though the way you want to be treated. And if you do all of that, you're going to figure out in this equation what the limitations are in that. And it may not be easy, but it's worth the analysis, the examination, and the journey.
I totally agree, Steve. And I think you're speaking about this from such a well-intentioned, purposeful place that it's, forget the systems. They will fall into place. If you are starting from this well-intentioned, spirit of really caring for your team members and beyond that, the clients and everyone else that you impact, everything else will fall into place. It just will. And the thing is that nothing stays static anyway. So some people will leave their parental leave, there's vacations, there's changes in their desire of the type of work they wish to do. And life changes. I mean, we just went through a pandemic and you're changing yourself. So if you have this type of an intention, it's able to ride the storm. It's able to ride all these changes in life that we all have to encounter. And sometimes that is the best way to continue to stay the course.
It's funny, in my earlier years of practice, when I was an associate, I got to see a lot of complaints against the lawyers that I worked for. And I think that was one of those moments in my life where I understood how there could be expectations, and there could be expectations that are met and expectations that are failed. And nothing is worse for everybody. And nobody wants to feel like they have disappointed somebody. But a lot of people just do the same thing over and over and over again. And, some people actually just get numb to the complaints and the disappointments of others. And anyway, that wasn't me. I learned my lesson from working for other lawyers that were complained about. And I listened very carefully to what those complaints were. And even in my early years, when I opened up my own office, I got some complaints too. And rather than brush it under the rug or point the finger back at the client or the lawyer or the judge, I took it personally, and I grew from it. And I think, and by the way, I'm around people that do that. So it's not like I'm so exceptional in that. I've put myself in a space where a lot of people around me approach life in the same way. So it actually is very normal to do it this way. And it doesn't feel so strange or different or challenging. But there's a lot of more people in the world than the few people that are around me, and I interact with them too. And I see that they have expectations, and in some cases, I have to say to them, that's a reasonable expectation for you, but it's not a reasonable expectation for the other person. So, you may want the government of Canada to issue you a passport when you walk in the office today at 4. I get it. You want to fly out next week. You want that passport now. But it's not a reasonable expectation for the passport office to have it ready for you tomorrow. They've got a different set of expectations. For them, if you get it in 6 weeks, you're lucky. And I'm just using that as an example. But the reality is, there's a lot of people out there that, if a lawyer says to them, what you want, I can do for you, it'll take a month. They don't get it. They don't understand that. Why? Why would it take that long? And so that's where communication is so important, because there's a lot of lawyers, quite frankly, a lot of professionals that will make promises to people because they want their approval. They want their business. They want their approval. They want to give the yes. So there's this hunger to give the yes. But sometimes it's short-sighted, because by giving the yes and knowing or learning shortly thereafter that you can't meet that expectation, that yes is going to be followed up by a bucket full of disappointment. Not good. Far better to say, I hear you. I'd want what you want, but I'm going to be honest with you. It's just not realistic. It's not going to happen, but this is what could happen. That's a far better conversation. And by the way, it builds tremendous loyalty and trust, because people are going to be like, okay, you know what? He's telling it to me how it is. He's not telling it to me because he wants me to feel better.
You're a communication ninja. And really, that's at the heart of those complaints against lawyers. Really, it's all about communication. So it sounds like those early experiences that you had were formative.
They were. And, we don't excel in law. We practice law. There's no such thing as I'm an excelling lawyer. Nope. We practice law. What does that mean? I'm a better lawyer today than I was yesterday, and better this year than I was last year. Why? Was it because I read another case or I had another client? Nope. It's because I had more experience. And isn't it funny that it takes us decades to get to the point where you've got the level of experience that could really move mountains, and then you retire? And then the next generation moves in and they invest 20 to 30 years. And then about 15 years later, they retire. And that's just the nature of the beast.
Yes, in my business too. And it's the perfect segue for my last question, which is all about the future of the profession. You have had decades witnessing all the changes, globalization to tech, remote work, and I'm wondering what you think is next.
What I think is next is, first of all, I'm really excited about next, because next are more lawyers, not less. Check the numbers. There are more lawyers going to law school and graduating today than there were before. That's number one. Next, we have more female lawyers than ever before. Next, in Ontario, we have way more lawyers that are not white males, and many Ontario lawyers that speak another language other than English. So on the first level, next is really excellent for diversity and multiculturalism, because lawyers, quite frankly, in my opinion, like doctors, dentists, accountants, and financial advisors, really need to reflect the population that they serve. They need to understand their needs, their culture, the way they interpret data, their philosophy. Like, different cultures even have a different philosophy when it comes to money or real estate or relationships. I mean, so everybody has their own heritage, and lawyers need to be able to serve people who come from different heritages. In Ontario, is so multicultural. So it couldn't be better for the next generation to have a large number of lawyers, including a large number of lawyers that are multicultural, to be able to serve that population. And let me not forget, let me not disregard the importance of the number of non-straight lawyers in Ontario, which is another representation that was critical. So that's just next in terms of the population of service providers. The other next is we've got about 500,000 people coming to Canada every year, many of them coming to not just Ontario, but to Toronto. That's a lot of people coming here. In 10 years, that's going to be 5 million people in Canada. Many of them aren't going to be in Toronto. So there's a huge demand to come here. And I can tell you, I know why. It's a great country to live in. Toronto's a great city to live in. And I'm not even in the tourism industry. So Toronto for law and lawyers is absolutely great. And it's only going to get better. And then, and I know this is where you were going, Sandra, technology in law. Well, it's going to get even better there. Why? Because we're going to harness technology and make what we do even better for people. We're not going to be replaced by robots. No different than, fax machines and cell phones, didn't replace humans. It just provided us with another tool. Yes, ChatGPT is going to be really a big player in law and in other areas as well. It will be a very big player, but it will not replace lawyers, because you cannot have a robot put his hand on the table and look at someone in the eye and say, I know what you're going through. I've had other clients go through what you've gone through, and I am going to help you get through this, me and you. ChatGPT can't do that. ChatGPT can't look somebody in the eye and give them a facial expression that reduces their anxiety level and makes them feel like tomorrow has hope. So there's a lot that I don't know about technology, AI, and ChatGPT, so I'm not going to pretend to be what I'm not. I mean, we all don't know the extent of some of this technology, but with what we've already gone through just in the last 25 years has been a mammoth amount of new technology, and it has improved the delivery of legal services. And it's my expectation, at least in the next 50 years, that lawyers are going to play a very big role in people's lives on many levels, and that a lot of the technology that is threatening to replace lawyers will be used by lawyers to help people in a positive way and to navigate some of the negative intrusions of technology. So, I think there's going to be an explosion of work that lawyers are going to have their hands on. And don't forget that a law degree is not just a degree to be a practicing lawyer. People with law degrees are in so many other lines of work, from academia to government to policy writing, working in Fortune 500 companies or running small family businesses. Lawyers are everywhere. And I'll tell you, it's one of the few professions where the skill set is so versatile. I was going to be a dentist. If I was a dentist, I could only be a dentist, maybe a professor of dentistry, maybe work for a company that makes dental appliances, but it's still very limited. Law, huge opportunities out there, and only going to get better.
It's interesting how your answer to that question, first of all, I love the enthusiasm, but beyond that, it really did tie to the first thing that you said. It was about humanity and using tech where it's appropriate, but having the balance in mind all the way so that you get the most out of it. And it always goes back to maintaining that humanity. Like when you called up your family law clients and said, no, I want to meet with you in person.
That's right. That's right.
I just know.
And I'll tell you, I'm at the point in my career right now where I know that I am making a difference in people's lives. And I've sadly had to attend and speak at way too many funerals that I would have liked to.
Mm.
And one thing that stands out is the importance of the eulogy. When the family goes up to the podium to give the eulogy, they often don't say, well, yeah, that person argued 36 cases and won 18 of them, or that person drove a such and such car, or bought and sold such and such properties, or had such and such in his RRSP. What people talk about is what Maya Angelou taught us. People don't remember what you said. People don't remember what you did. People remembered how you made them feel. And that is love your fellow man as you would want to be loved. And that's precisely what I do every day, both personally and professionally, or at least I try to.
On purpose. Yeah, that's so great. Wonderful. Thank you, Steve, for your time and your insights. And to our listeners, if you are interested in learning more about Steve's divorce law practice, please go to benmor.com or benmorfamilylawstrategies.ca. You've been listening to Get in the Driver's Seat, stories about leadership moments in small to mid-sized professional practices. I'm your host, Sandra Bekhor, practice management coach at Bekhor Management. Take care, everybody.